After Nightmare finished everything he felt he could focus on, he went to his private section of the observatory to change into his modern casual clothes. The others had already changed and were gathered on one of the balconies, chatting as they watched the city below. "Everyone ready?" Nightmare asked as he approached. With a nod, Dust handed his boss a paper not only with a set of addresses, but also the exact time and place he wanted to travel to. He really had thought all this out. "All right, everyone grab around and grab a root. You know the drill," said Nightmare, stretching a root out to each of them. In seconds, they passed from the shadows of Rivaldo to the year 2000 in Seoul. Nightmare was sure to pick an AU where monsters lived on the surface and never been sent underground, if only to keep the human residents from being too curious about them. They went from a fairly quiet afternoon into a mildly busy street, emerging from shadows of an alleyway. Humans and monsters passed casually on the pavement, past tiny stores and bright neon lights. Hanging bulletins advertised just about every sort of fried food or noodle, along with salon services and little commodities. They'd already visited different versions of Tokyo, which this seemed the most similar, but it wasn't quite as flashy or busy. Nonetheless, Nightmare figured coming to Seoul was something more personal to Dust. A glimpse of a home long lost. "Lead the way, birthday boy," Nightmare teased, speaking Korean as best as he could. Dust rolled his eyes. "Do not tell the locals it's my birthday," he said back in Korean as he strolled ahead. Though Dust would be the only one to be able to read and speak Korean fluently, Nightmare had been learning it, along with several other languages he thought would be useful. For the Dark Guardian, this would be a great opportunity to brush up on his practice of the language. "What about the, discounts we could get?" Nightmare said back, though he struggled for a moment to find the word ha-lin for discount. "You're rich, we don't need discounts," Dust sighed. "What are you saying?" Cross said hesitantly. It was always a bit awkward when the others were kept out of the loop. "I'm just teasing him," Nightmare waved a hand. The air was filled with delicious scents. When Dust asked to get Korean street food, they all assumed it meant they'd be walking around with food in hand. They were then surprised when Dust made his way to an area full of open tables and took them to the front register. Nightmare listened as he ordered several cuts of meat, fried rice, dumpling stew, drinks, and several sauces before finally turning to Nightmare for payment. Easily, Nightmare used the shadows of his pockets to pull cash from the register, handing it to Dust, who then paid for the meal. "Oh wait, this is barbecue, isn't it?" said Killer, excited as he observed what the other customers were eating. Each table had its own grill where steam and smoke rose in clouds of delightful aromas. "You have to cook it yourself?" said Cross. "As fresh as it can get," Horror grinned. With a little white flag labeled 13, Dust held it up and waved them off to a table close to the street. A tiger waitress would come to bring them glasses and bottles of soju as Dust turned on the grill to get it heated. "Hey, you must be feeling pretty nostalgic, huh?" Killer said to Dust as he looked around the street. Dust lit a cigarette, taking a drag before blowing it away from the table. "A bit." Nightmare smiled. Yeah, Dust was absolutely enjoying himself. Moments later, several plates were brought out of raw meat, sauces, chopsticks, and rice. "Heart, intestines, and prime rib cuts for you lesser mortals." Dust pointed to each with his chopsticks before putting several fatty cuts of the white intestines on the grill. "Hey, cow guts! Hey, Cross, maybe eating some of the beast's heart will cure you of your phobia of cows!" Killer teased him. "Yeah, I doubt that," said the knight, popping open a bottle of soju. They each got their choice cuts on the little grill, Horror taking an especial interest in how long they needed to cook on each side. After getting several portions in their mouths, the large bowl of spicy dumpling soup would be brought out. All of them had their range of tolerance for spice. In fact, it was probably one of the skeletons' favorite pastimes, challenging each other with it. Nightmare could tolerate a lot, but was certainly the lesser of the five, following surprisingly by Horror. It often left Dust, Cross, and Killer putting each other up to the most ridiculous spice challenges. "You see, you underestimate me because I enjoy pain," said Killer. "Bullshit, I seen you cry all night over a stubbed toe," said Cross, mouth half full. "That's different!" "Please, let's not play the suffering Olympics," Dust groaned, but was grinning. Though the conversation continued with the usual friendly bickering, Nightmare was more focused on the pain in his mouth from the spices, doing everything he could to hide his discomfort but not look weak in front of the others. Luckily, with as much Horror would eat, regardless of the spice, as the food all dried up, Nightmare was glad the meal was finished. Soon enough, they were off to the penny arcade. Not even bothering to go up to the front desk, Dust pointed out to where the machine tokens were being kept, and Nightmare's pocket was full of them. Dust would split off with Horror and Cross, helping with any translation, to go play fighting and racing games. Nightmare stuck with Killer, able to translate enough to get by, but not play anything too complicated. They'd play some of the ski ball challenges before something across the room caught Killer's attention. Nightmare! Nightmare, look! He gasped, practically grappling the smaller skeleton and pointing across the way. What? Nightmare tilted his brow. To him, he just saw another arcade machine, this time a pair next to each other with an elevated platform and guardrails. It's DDR! I didn't know they had DDR! Come on, we have to play! Dragged along, Nightmare didn't mind. Seeing Killer have this much fun brought a smile to his face. Atop the platform were 2 floor pads with arrows pointing in different directions. They climbed the short stairs to get on. It was a dancing game. Putting in the tokens to operate it, they'd have to find a song that sounded fun. I used to make kids cry playing this game, said Killer as the song started to play, arrows on the screen rising to the timing bar. Did you really? Well, don't make me cry. I never played this before, said Nightmare, realizing rather quickly he'd have to pay attention to keep up. While the dark skeleton was focused on getting the beat right and pressing the buttons on time, Killer was throwing his all into it, swinging his arms with each step like a professional. Nightmare found it quite distracting. With a blush, he thought how much he'd rather be watching Killer play this than do it himself. Just as the song came to a finish, Nightmare huffed as he'd clearly lost. Yeah, I was no match. Woo! Nice moves! Cross clapped as the other 3 had come to watch. How long were you standing there? Said Nightmare, feeling a little embarrassed to be tripping over himself. We ran out of tokens. Horror grinned. I can beat that, said Dust, looking at Killer's score. Oh yeah, tough guy? I'd like to see you try. The grinning skeleton leaned over the safety rail and down at Dust. Permission to kick his ass, boss, said Dust. Only in the game, Nightmare chuckled, climbing down the stairs. Oh, I'm gonna make you dust, literally, said Killer, reloading the game with tokens as Dust joined him. Get prepared to be carried, loser, the hooded skeleton huffed. Picking the most difficult songs they could find, Killer and Dust locked in like their lives depended on it. Nightmare sensed an intense focus from them both as the song started. There was a strange syncing that occurred between the two as the song began. Though the arrows demanded that they step in the same direction, the way they chose to move their arms was often similar or mirrored each other. Cross whistled and folded his arms. Boss, I think we're in the wrong business. Nightmare chuckled. Think Mettaton and Mew Mew would take them on as honorary members? Maybe a bit too edgy. Hey, I'm sure there's an AU for that, Horror grinned. Dust won the first match, but only because Killer missed a single move. They went again and again. Killer, then Dust, then Killer again until both of them were tying at a long streak. Horror got bored and wandered off to get them some street donuts. By the time he got back, both Killer and Dust were wheezing, a slight shake in their legs. It really was a challenge when you couldn't just shortcut your way around it. So, think they're done yet? Cross asked. Dust, if you're exhausting yourself too much, you won't be able to drive the motorcycle, said Nightmare, hoping this would put an end to it. Dust and Killer leaned against the guardrails opposite each other, both desperately in need of a break. Damn it, Dust grunted. Ha! Clearly I won, Killer huffed. No, you didn't. Why don't we take a vote then, boss? Killer looked down at him. And my vote is you drop it before this gets less than friendly. Both of you go out to the sidewalk and chill out, Nightmare said, sensing a tinge of resentment he snuffed out quickly before it could grow. Both skeletons groaned before descending the stairs. They'd all head out together, Horror watching over the 2 hotheads as Nightmare and Cross teleported to the back room of the convenience store nearby. They came back with some water to help finish off the donuts and a case of beer of a brand Nightmare had seen Dust drinking before. When they got back, Dust reached for the case, but Nightmare pulled it away. Nuh-uh, not until we get to the beach. The hood skeleton rolled his eyes as Cross handed him a bottle of water. As soon as Killer and Dust could stand without wobbling, Nightmare would teleport them to the motorcycle rental from the address he'd been given. As Dust went to negotiate with the owner, the others checked out the various night bikes, lined with neon lights. This is cyberpunk as hell, Killer grinned, getting atop a black bike with red lights. I like the purple one, Cross pointed out. Fuck, guys, bad news, said Dust, turning back to them. I forgot we needed licenses to rent these out. Oh, said Nightmare before looking to the shopkeeper. A second later, the man screamed, falling through his own shadow and disappearing. Not anymore. Dust blinked and grinned. In minutes, Horror would have a case of keys cracked open, each of them picking out a ride. The hooded skeleton picked a bike with blue lights, while Horror grabbed a green four-wheeler with a satisfying rev. He'd take the case of beers since the four-wheeler had a basket in the front. Nightmare, however, quickly realized he wouldn't be driving. All 4 feet of him couldn't properly fit on any of the bikes, and he certainly didn't have the confidence to operate one with his roots. Hey boss, hop on with me, I'll keep you safe. Killer grinned. Cross pulled his bike up beside Killer. Will you? Because if you've got the boss, you can't be doing any crazy tricks on us. No tricks, it'll be a smooth ride, I promise. Killer held up his hands. It better be. In any case, everyone put on a helmet, said Nightmare, picking up a black full visor helmet for each of them off the wall with his roots. Ah, come on, we won't look as cool with helmets, Killer protested. If you get bugs stuck in your sockets, I'm gonna laugh, said Dust, lowering his hood to put on the helmet. Killer's face twisted in disgust. Dust had a point, which made him reconsider. After getting his own helmet on, Killer helped Nightmare onto his bike, wrapping his arms around him. His roots also wrapped around the back of the bike, just above the wheel to help him feel more secure. Soon enough, they were casually riding down the city streets, sparkling skylights above, and cars driving gently to either side of them. They didn't need to get too crazy with it. The hum of the engines were music on their own, echoing their bones and thumping at the air. The neon lights of the bikes reflected off the pavement, making them look like their own private light show. Everyone followed Dust since he could read the street signs. Holding on to Killer felt nice. Despite the chill air getting through his clothes, Killer felt warm against the Dark Guardian. Nightmare realized this was probably the closest he'd ever touched Killer for an extended time. It made him feel safe. Not just because the thrill of the motorbike could be scary on its own, but safe in a more intimate way. As they drove ahead, Nightmare looked up at Killer, unable to see his face through the helmet, but the red light of his soul reflected off of it. He trusted Killer with his life, in a way he used to trust Dream, maybe more. When it came to his brother, of course he couldn't hurt him, due to their soul bond, and yet Dream had. When he thought about it, Nightmare could still feel the sting of the arrow through his ribs. But Killer didn't have that obligation. From the very beginning, the skeleton had sworn his life to Nightmare. And in that oath, he'd never failed. Nightmare was certain Killer would hurt himself before ever considering hurting him. He was certain if he asked it, Killer would hurt himself if Nightmare wished it. Though the others were still loyal to the Dark Guardian, he felt Killer's devotion was unmatched. As they drove along the river where ships passed with colorful lights, the buildings around them got smaller with the emergence of trees. They were steadily getting closer to the beach where Dust wanted to relax. They'd cross a long bridge where the street sign read in Korean and English, Goidongdu Island. Closing his eyes, Nightmare pressed his head into Killer's back, tightening his grip in an affectionate squeeze. He wasn't sure if Killer had noticed. Though he told himself to stay awake, he almost could have fallen asleep like this. After a while longer, the bikes finally came to a stop. Shaken from his daze, Killer spoke softly to him to make sure he hadn't fallen asleep. Next to the beach, they were on the observation deck. Several telescopes lined the pathway. The wooden railing was covered in tied ribbons and notes and pictures. As Nightmare removed his helmet, he sensed right away that this was some sort of reverence. The picture showing images of many people, humans, monsters, families. An eerie silence hung over them. They knew something was up as Dust strolled up to one of the telescopes, looking across the water. "What is this place?" said Horror, looking at a picture of a soldier with his wife and daughters. Dust didn't answer right away, continuing to stare through the telescope. Curious, Cross grabbed another one, pointing it in the direction of the landmass across the street. "There's people over there. Lights and soldiers." Finally, Dust let go of his telescope, reaching into his pocket for a smoke. Knowing everyone was watching him, he grunted, looking over his shoulder. "It's stupid. Some part of me wanted to see it one last time, since I don't think I'll ever see it again. I didn't really care about the war. Just did as I was told. In the end, we still got fucked over for it. The monsters in this AU don't know how lucky they are that the humans never turned on them. We fought side by side against our own brothers, and for nothing. Just for the biggest dicks on the planet could tear our home apart like a toy they wanted to claim. Sorry, I can't explain it any better than that. That's okay. You don't need to explain any more than you want to, said Horror, close behind him. Dust shook his head, taking a drag and blowing smoke into the darkness. It's always one fucking war after another. I don't know who's to blame. Does it matter? Why can't people just live in peace? He said, his voice growing numb. Finally, after a long moment, he glanced over his shoulder. There was a glint of a tear on his cheek, but he put on a fake smile. I could use one of those beers. In less than a second, Horror had one of the cans out of the case and cracked it open, handing it to Dust. Finding the place on the beach where they could stare across the street, the five of them sat in the sand with their beers. It was nice to be here for Dust. Nightmare could tell this was one of those things he didn't need consoling about. He just needed to know they were there for him as he quietly wrestled his feelings. I never thought that much about it. The only person here who still has their home is Nightmare, said Cross, leaning back. The sound of water and the breeze filled their ears. Yeah, well, I'll never ask to go back, that's for sure, said Killer before taking another drink. There's nothing left for me there. Horror nodded with a grunt of agreement. He sat the closest to Dust, being the most worried, though he only expressed it through body language. He and Dust had grown deeply close. Nightmare suspected it had something to do with them both being the most quiet. Guess that means Nightmare's home is our home now, Cross continued. Feels a little strange to say it. Why's that? Nightmare asked. I don't know. Feels a little like we're encroaching, like we don't really deserve it. The dark skeleton shook his head, then smiled. You guys are the greatest friends I've ever had. If you did want to see Dreamtale as your home, I wouldn't mind. I'm happy you all want to stay so close to me. Did we really have a choice? Dust muttered. A tension cut between them. Nightmare folded his arms, leaning forward to look at Dust. Would you rather stay here, or anywhere else in the multiverse? Say it, and I'll set you on your way. His red eyes glowed in the darkness, fixing on Nightmare. Unlike Cross, I have been doing some thinking. You know I'm never going to ask that. You know none of us ever will. You can go anywhere, do anything you want. You chose us because you knew we wouldn't refuse you, didn't you? Staring for a long moment, Nightmare was searching for the words before Killer spoke. Hey, asshole! You want him to put you back where you came from? Then just say it. He didn't have to save any of us, you ungrateful shithead. Nightmare turned, putting a hand up to Killer as the skeleton souls crackled. Whoa, that's way too far. No, Night, I'm sick of it, said Killer, standing up and pointing at Dust. The boss bends over backwards to make you happy. We came here and did this whole night for you, and you still treat us like a nuisance. I'm tired of you and your fucking high horse like your suffering is better than the rest of us. Standing up too, Nightmare used his body to block between them. Killer, that's enough. And why do you always defend him like this? Killer said, looking at him. He's never wanted to be our friend. Even after 2 years, he's always looking for something to be negative about. Killer, stop! Nightmare raised his voice, his roots curling from absorbing the anger. Killer went quiet, gave a huff, then turned around. Swinging his arms in frustration, he punched the air before rubbing his skull and walked down the beach. Nightmare watched Killer as he walked away, not sure what to do. Sorry, I was being a prick. Dust sighed. He's right. I should be grateful. I don't know why I said those things. I'm lashing out at you for things that aren't your fault. After a moment, Horror put an arm around Dust and patted his shoulder. Surrendering, Dust leaned into the big skeleton and closed his eyes. I should apologize to him. Let me get him calmed down first. We'll be right back, said Nightmare, walking after Killer. Occasionally his feet would stumble slightly in the sand, the alcohol getting to his head as he contemplated teleporting ahead, but decided not to. It would be several minutes before he caught up to Killer, who put his arms around himself. He eventually slowed to a stop and looked back at Nightmare. Hey, do you want me to give you a minute? Nightmare asked. Letting an arm fall, Killer sighed. No, it's fine. Black tears dripped from his chin into the sand at his feet. He says he's sorry. He wants to apologize. He's drunk. We're all drunk, Killer. Lifting his arms, he rubbed his skull with both hands. Ugh! There was no anger in the gesture, just frustration. Tilting his head, Nightmare came closer and gave Killer a hug. He lowered his arms, embracing Nightmare back, resting his head against the blighted skeleton. I just don't get why you put up with him, Killer sighed. It's difficult to explain. I have to believe someone like him isn't too broken to have friends, just like me, said Nightmare, holding out his hand. The shadow covering his bone was illuminated by the red light of Killer's soul. But you're not broken, and neither is he, said Killer, taking Nightmare's hand in his. And neither am I or Horror. Cross doesn't count, he's the perfect bastard. Nightmare chuckled to himself, in spite of the circumstances. Gently sitting back down, Killer continued to hold Nightmare's hands, who sat close to him. My point is, you already proved we can have friends. We have each other. You're the one who keeps our little crazy family together. I know. I'm not upset with Dust. What he said, it's true. I did look for people who wouldn't say no. I guess it was selfish of me. Killer shook his head. Why does it matter? You didn't cause what happened to us. You got us out. So what if he didn't refuse? It matters because it has a lot to say about who I am, you know? Why I'm doing what I do. You're doing it for your brother, and to stay sane while waiting for him to come back, Killer nodded. Yeah, Nightmare sighed, leaning against Killer again. They were quiet for a long moment, Killer wrapping an arm around him, holding him close. Nightmare wasn't sure how to ask this, but he decided now was better than never. Touching the skeleton's chest, he looked up at him. Killer, I love you. A warm smile, Killer's eyes squinted. I love you too. No, I mean, I know you. You'll not live long enough to see Dream wake up, but I want to spend as much time with you as I can, for as long as you have to live. Shifting slightly, Killer turned to cup Nightmare's face in his hands, making him blush, a warm flush across his cheeks. I know, and I want to spend the rest of my life with you. I'm yours, Night. Forever. I love you. Sockets growing heavy, Nightmare closed his eye as Killer kissed him. He hadn't realized how much he wanted this till now, his hands crawling up Killer's back. He could also feel the skeleton's hunger, his desire for him. He wanted more than just kisses. Nightmare let Killer push him down and crawl on top of him, his face illuminated in that red light. He could see a cautious consideration past Killer's expression. This did make Nightmare feel vulnerable, exposed, but he wanted this too. If he could give himself over to Killer, then he felt, in some strange way, he could reclaim some part of him that he had lost. Hands gripping Killer's arms, he begged for the skeleton to claim him. His smile returned, Killer leaning over him, kissing him again. As his chest pressed closer, Nightmare could feel Killer's soul against his ribs. Nightmare's arms around Killer's shoulders. Killer's hands came under Nightmare's shirt, pushing it up. Then something curious happened. Killer's soul slipped between his ribs and into Nightmare's chest. Gasping, he felt a sudden pressure against his own soul as Killer's occupied the same space. Roots writhing and digging into the ground, the rush of all of Killer's emotions at once made his bones ache with pleasure. What was this? He never felt something like this before. Frightened but excited, he didn't want to stop. He could feel Killer's tongue against his neck, his fingers dug into the groove of Killer's ribs. Meow! Both of them froze. Meow! Meow! Killer looked up, his soul escaping Nightmare as the blighted skeleton also arched his head towards the sound. The scrappiest of kittens he had ever seen stumbled out of the grass and onto the sand towards them, mewing at them in desperation. Ah! Killer looked rapidly down at Nightmare and up at the kitten, which simply could not be ignored. Defeated, Killer climbed off Nightmare before reaching his hands out to the kitten. Hello, baby, where did you come from? With a deep, frustrated sigh, Nightmare shook away his disappointment before rolling over. Killer had the tiny kitten clutched in his hands, pressed to his chest, petting as it continued to cry. Oh, little baby is so hungry. What are you doing out here? What indeed, Nightmare groaned. Sorry, boss, but look! Killer turned, holding the tiny tuxedo kitten out to Nightmare. With the big sad eyes, it mewed at him. But the next mew didn't come from the kitten. Looking back to the grass, 2 furry, pale heads poked up, then 2 more. 4 kittens bolted out and into the sand, ambushing the skeletons. Yelping, Nightmare fell back as 1, then 2 climbed onto his legs, crying at him. "Oh my god, kittens! Ah, they're so cute!" cried Killer, reaching to start gathering them up in his arms. "Boss, can we keep them, please? Please?" Well, yes, just... The dark skeleton was distracted, gently trying to grab the kittens from clinging onto his pants and into his arms. "Where are we going to put them?" "We could put them in the tower with us. Look, there's a kitten for each of us. Come on. We should show the others." Brimming with excitement, Killer ran back to the others with Nightmare close behind. Though there were no stars, the light of the city against the foggy skyline lit their way. Cross was laying back while Dust and Horror appeared to be more in a cuddle than just a supportive hug. The 3 of them looked up as they heard Killer screaming, "Kittens! Guys, we have kittens!" "What's that?" said Cross, before Killer handed him a tuxedo cat. "One for you!" Before the other 2 could get a word in, Killer placed a gray and yellow kitten in Dust's lap. "2 for you! Oh, boss, I'll take the white one!" As Killer took the kitten from his arm, Nightmare was left with a runty black kitten in his hands. How appropriate. "Oh goodness, they're so cute," said Cross, cupping the kitten in his hand. "What a cute little guy!" Dust seemed a little stunned as he sat up, but Horror grabbed up the yellow and gray kitten and smiled. "These 2 are girls," he grinned. "I think mine's a girl too," said Killer, rubbing the head of the white kitten affectionately against his brow. "A pretty princess, yes she is." "Why are they meowing so much?" said Dust, a slight frustration to his voice. "They're hungry. Are we really keeping them?" Cross asked, looking to Nightmare. The Dark Guardian sighed. "I suppose they shouldn't be too much trouble." Though he wanted to sound stern, Nightmare already had the runt tucked gently in his arm, petting its tiny head with his free hand. "We need to get them food and other supplies. Is there a pet store nearby?" Horror asked Dust. "Yeah, there is," Dust sighed. In moments, Nightmare took them all into the darkness of a local pet store on the island. Cross clicked on an overhead light as the others searched for supplies. Killer found a carrier to put the kittens in. Horror grabbed up several boxes of canned wet cat food as Dust grabbed litter in a box. "Cross, they need toys. Can you grab some?" Killer asked him. "Oh yeah, sure." Feeling courteous, Nightmare left some gold on the store counter before they were ready to return to the observatory in Rivaldo. Killer would make the mistake of letting the kittens out of the carrier without having any kind of boundary set up. Soon enough, Cross and Dust were chasing after escaping kittens while Horror cracked open one of the cans of cat food. All 5 kittens scampered to the tallest skeleton, climbing his legs in desperation. He needed the help of the others to pick the kittens off to set down with the open cans. Each kitten greedily ate their portion of pate, vocally slopping up wet bites and purring. "Guess we need to name them," said Killer as all 5 of them sat surrounding the tiny creatures, watching them eat. "I'm going to call mine Socks. He's got little white socks on his feet," said Cross, pointing to the tiny legs. "Soot," said Dust, petting the back of the gray kitten, who stuck her butt in the air against his touch. I'm not good with naming. Let's call her Potato?" said Horror, referring to the orange kitten. "Why Potato?" Killer tilted his brow. "I don't know. She's fluffy and golden," Horror shrugged. "Well, I know I'm going to call mine Snowball because she's white as snow," Killer said, laying on his stomach and kicking his feet in the air. "What about you, boss?" "I'm going to call him Little Shit," said Nightmare, remembering that the little creatures robbed him of his moment with Killer. "Aw, you can't call him that," Killer groaned. "Pick something nice." Nightmare folded his arms. "All right, Duke Ferdinand's the Great." "I think I prefer Little Shit," said Dust. With a yawn, Nightmare shook his head, not really invested in the kitten's feeding time. "I'm gonna turn in. Good night. Don't stay up too long," said Nightmare, getting up and heading to his private corner. "All right, boss. Good night, boss." Some variety of such came from each of them. The night on the town made him feel sweaty. Nightmare cleaned himself up with water from a small basin before changing into a nightgown. He longed for the large, extremely soft mattress on his bed, playfully flinging himself onto it before using his roots to crawl under the covers. The fabric had a nice chill to it, which he spread out his limbs to cool off. A root would reach out from the covers to click off his lantern, surrounding him in peaceful darkness. He could hear the others mucking about with the kittens. Only a few more meows came before a deep purring. "See, I told you they'd fall asleep right away," he heard Horror whisper. Nearly asleep, he heard the curtain to his space move. The red light of Killer's soul glowed in the dark. "Hey, boss. Sorry about the beach." With a deep sigh, Nightmare stretched as he sat up. Without a word, he waved for Killer to come closer. Still, he had to wave again to have his beloved come close enough for him to touch. "Stay with me, would you?" he whispered. Killer smiled before crawling into bed with him, wrapping his arms and legs around him snugly. Finding a perch for his head under Killer's chin, Nightmare closed his eyes as his roots moved to curl around them. "I want you with me, always," Nightmare mumbled. "Of course, I'll always be yours," Killer said softly. Comfortable in each other's embrace, they'd fall asleep soundly. In the morning, Nightmare woke to the sound of mews, the weight of a kitten crawling up the bed sheets making its way to the sleeping skeletons. Killer groaned, getting up fast. "Potato! Why are you awake, silly girl?" he whispered. Untangling himself, Nightmare let Killer go to grab the kitten and take it away. He, however, rolled over to go back to sleep for a few more hours. "Boss, breakfast is here," he heard Cross say. "Hey, boss." The knight came to gently shake his shoulder. "Are you all right?" Nightmare groaned, sitting up. It was unusual for him to sleep in. He was normally more punctual than the others. But today he just felt achy in a way. Not painful, but an exhaustion that refused to break. "I'm up. I'll be up," he yawned, groggily crawling out of bed. "All right. Hey, boss, there's something I wanted to ask you, but I wanted to be in private. Any chance we could talk today?" Nightmare tilted his brow as he got up to grab his robes from the rack he'd left them on. It was a rare thing that Cross ever needed to talk in private. He'd done so with the other skeletons when they were having problems with someone else in the party, but Cross didn't sound like he was upset about anything. "Sure, we can talk. Where would you like to go?" "Oh, the East Hall, the one that overlooks the canal. After you finish your breakfast, of course," he said, beaming a smile. "I'll be waiting for you." He headed out through the curtain, smiling ear to ear. "Sure, I'll see you there." Nightmare stood, a bit baffled. He sensed excitement and joy from the night. What could this be about? Horror and Dust had already headed out to do their rounds, checking up with the guards. Killer, however, was on the floor, playing with the kittens. It wasn't a big deal, since Killer was often always at Nightmare's side to protect him, often joined by Cross. But Cross preferred more duties than just that of a bodyguard. The knight had a special charm to him that made it easy for people to talk to him. He'd likely be checking up with the instructors, community leaders, and taking messages for anyone who wished to speak with the Dark Guardian. "Ah, Nightmare, they're so cute!" Killer beamed a smile, holding 2 kittens to his cheeks. Though he was dressed and armed for any possible aggression, it was a juxtaposition to see him being so affectionate. Nightmare sat at the table where his cold breakfast waited, Killer standing next to him with the kittens held to his chest. "I wonder if this is what it feels like to be a dad." Taking a sip of cold coffee, Nightmare smirked. "Nothing like it. Children are a completely different story from kittens." Sitting in the seat next to him, Killer put the kittens in his lap before they eventually leapt off to the floor. "You say it like you know. You ever want to be a father, Nightmare?" Cutting up the eggs on his plate, Nightmare felt his shoulders grow stiff, a blush on his face. "One night of cuddling and you want to have a baby?" A greater red flush dominated Killer's cheeks. That's not what I said." "Well, if I were to be a father, who else do you think you would be with?" said the Dark Guardian, finally getting his first bite. I mean, sure, but I'm sure after I'm gone, you'll find someone else. It could happen later." His words sent a cold shiver in Nightmare's bones. He didn't want to think about losing Killer. "You're not dying tomorrow. You're not even 30 yet. I'm sure, well, if things work out between us." "Damn, I shouldn't have asked, should I?" Killer shrugged, rubbing the back of his neck with both hands. Smiling, Nightmare gently shook his head. I mean, I never thought about being a father. I don't want to be one soon. That I know. Maybe. One day. After taking a few more bites, Nightmare noticed Killer staring at him with that blush. What? It's just, I really love you, you know? Killer grinned. Stop. Nightmare hid his face with a hand. I know I'm not easy on the eyes. Killer took his hand before gently kissing it, like a prince might his princess. You're more beautiful than the moon and all the stars in the sky. Part of Nightmare wanted to tell him not to lie. Nightmare knew he was ugly. No amount of flattery would change that. And yet, there was no disgust, nor repulsion in Killer's gaze, only want. The Dark Guardian felt his roots go stiff as Killer leaned over him, their teeth meeting in a gentle kiss. His soul fluttered lightly in his ribs. How was it so easy for the black-tiered skeleton? And oh, how madly Nightmare adored the affection. Hands caressing Killer's cheeks, he really did want to drag him back to bed, breakfast be damned. Killer seemed to have the same idea, his arms begging to lift his master from his seat. No, stop. Cross is waiting for me, Nightmare said, gently breaking their embrace. Cross, what does he want? Killer grumbled, pushing his mouth to the side. I don't know, but Nightmare gave him another kiss. After I talk to him, I'll give you a few more hours of me. I want you all day and all night. You'll need to schedule that. If Killer had eyelights, they'd be rolling. All right, fine. I'm going to play with the kittens instead, he said, finally giving up. A chuckle of amusement escaped Nightmare at his lover's sass. There was plenty of time for sweet nothings later, or so he believed. Taking a few more bites and finishing off his coffee, Nightmare headed down the lift, making his way to the east hall of the university. Everyone he passed courteously greeted him with a bow of their head. Though the humans had come to revere him, there wasn't a single soul among them that he trusted. If he wanted, he could kill any of them with the blink of an eye. They knew not to approach him unless invited. Months before seizing Rivaldo, Nightmare and his knights had been roaming the countryside for nearly 2 years, spreading the word of his gospel with the promise of a blissful afterlife, but only should the humans remain pure. In his teachings, he also spoke of a final judgment day to come, sometime before his brother's awakening, a day in which he plotted to slaughter them all. Of course, to them he said he was going to rapture them. It sounded much sweeter to their ignorant ears than genocide. Before rounding the corner, Nightmare poked his head around. Sure enough, Cross was waiting. Looking over the balustrade, his fingers nervously tapped the stone as the knight fought the urge to pace. Nightmare sensed fear and anxiety from his soul. Cross? Said Nightmare, now worried. He approached as his protector turned around, his hands behind his back. Nightmare! Thank you for coming, he said, smiling, but worry in his eyes. The blighted skeleton tilted his head. If it were anyone else, he'd be suspicious of the behavior, but he trusted Cross nearly as much as he trusted Killer. Is everything all right? You seem upset. Huh? Oh, no, I'm not upset at all. I just needed to ask you something, he said, before putting a fist to his mouth, clearing his throat. A second more, he took Nightmare's hand, looking at first to kneel, but then decided against it. Nightmare, would you go on a date with me? Socket widening. Nightmare's jaw went lax as he felt his spine stiffen. Oh, no. You see... His face turned to a crooked smile. He was both flattered and also overcome with pity. Killer and I just hooked up last night. Both of them were blushing as Cross seemingly equally stunned. Really? Oh, Cross, if only you had asked me sooner, Nightmare thought to himself. He really would have considered it. Damn, this awful timing. He still wanted Killer more than Cross, but the knight would have been a good partner. Nightmare was sure of it. Yeah, I'm sorry, Cross, Nightmare smiled, lifting his shoulders. I don't know what you see in me, but it's very charming of you. I'm really sorry. What was it that both of them saw in him anyway? He wished he could see it himself. No, that's fine, said Cross, letting go of Nightmare's hand. Killer's great. Killer and you will be a great couple. Though there was still a storm of emotions coming from Cross, Nightmare wasn't sure what he was sensing. Are you sure? I mean, Cross, It's okay, really, said Cross, washing all those feelings away with gratitude. I mean it. Sorry, I must have embarrassed you. Nightmare shook his head. No, not at all. I'm glad you asked me. If you started flirting with me, I would have been sad to tell you off. I'm flattered, really, he nodded. Great! Let's just forget this happened then, he said, rubbing the back of his head. I'm gonna go check and see if there's mail. As the knight turned around, swiftly walking away, Nightmare stared, watching him go, thinking of what could have been. You're gonna make someone very happy someday, Nightmare whispered to himself. Several months passed since that night when Killer and Nightmare were officially together. Horror and Dust seemed slightly amused by the news and went to comfort Cross that night with a trip to the tavern. Turns out, Cross had been talking to them about asking Nightmare for a date, and they insisted that he should do so soon, as it was clear Nightmare and Killer were growing closer than usual. They were sad for Cross's minor misfortune, but they seemed to feel as Nightmare that the knight would find a good partner one day. Nightmare had scheduled a sermon to take place in the town square, something he arranged for the Spectre performance to spread word of to everyone in the city. By the time the day arrived, hundreds of more people had come to visit the capital. They wanted to hear the words of the Dark Guardian and what his plans were for the kingdom in the years ahead. Predicting the size of the crowd, Nightmare would hire many more orators to help spread the words of his speech. Additionally, Cross built up the training of the guards into proper soldiers, so they may defend the city in case any former nobles decided to take a chance on wrestling back control of the capital. Over those months, they also sorted themselves out into proper rooms, picking from the old professor dorms, Nightmare taking the old dean's quarters. Waking on the day of the speech, the sun had also risen to dawn. Next to Nightmare, Killer was snoring gently, still fast asleep. Wanting to get up and start getting ready, Nightmare quickly realized he couldn't move. All 5 kittens, which were now twice their original size, had piled on them in the night. Even though a kitten was supposed to belong to each of them, they all seemed to prefer Killer, following him around wherever he went. Killer's snores were accompanied by a choir of purrs, making the dark skeleton realize he was doomed to remain between the sheets until they woke up. He didn't really mind, though. Scooting closer to his love, he kissed his head before wrapping his arms around him. Killer yawned, but didn't really wake, only shifting into the embrace to hold Nightmare. He mumbled something, but nothing Nightmare could discern. It was moments like this that made Nightmare feel content. Watching the skeleton sleep, he wished Killer could stay with him for the next 5 centuries. He was the cure to his loneliness. How could he possibly carry on without him? Nightmare would drift off to sleep again, waking an hour later as Killer got up, greeting each kitten with affectionate words and pets. Are you guys hungry? Do my babies want food? Yes, they do. Come with me. The mention of food sent all 5 kittens wailing as they flew off the bed, following Killer to the pantry. Nightmare groaned and turned over, sighing gently. Not realizing much time had passed, he woke to Killer, giving him gentle kisses. Big day today, boss. Gotta get up. Nightmare stretched and smiled. What if I don't want to? You want to cancel? Killer grinned. You're not supposed to indulge me. My only ability is to indulge you. Anything my lord desires, said Killer, leaning his head on his hand. With a chuckle, Nightmare asked him to pull him from the bed and help him dress. Breakfast would arrive, for which they'd step out to see Dust, Horror, Cross waiting for them. Instead of taking a carriage, Nightmare insisted on being seen by the people. They would walk the street, Nightmare's 4 knights protecting him as he headed to the town square. Though it was a summer day, the sky always seemed to be overcast here. Still, the heat made itself known with an inescapable humidity. Though he was arriving early, as the speech was to start soon, he figured it would give people time to gather and ask questions before things began. It was also a time to see if there were any dissenters who would challenge his authority. A 3-foot-tall stage had been set up to help Nightmare speak over the crowd, along with a few bundles of hay for them to be able to sit. Nightmare told Cross and Killer to speak to members of the crowd, sorting them to bring to Nightmare for any concerns they might have. There were things he expected. Though food had been made available with the bread lines, people desired to purchase their own goods and have the money to do so. There was still illness in the city that needed to be addressed. People had questions about the World Tree, Dream and himself, as well as the Celestial Doctrine. Nightmare promised that there would be employment for everyone soon, as well as hiring doctors from Edenfall. As for questions about the doctrine, they would be answered in due time. But something would happen right before the speech began. With his blue book in hand, Nightmare stood as he heard a voice shout over the crowd. 3 mounted figures, 2 upon horses and 1 upon a pony, approached the stage. The mounts, as well as their riders, were dressed in regalia of Asgore's royal guard. One rider was a fox monster with long robes under her armor, with a face that felt familiar to him. The other was fully armored, a helmet covering their face, long black hair poured out from it, but Nightmare could sense their red human soul. The third, upon the pony, at first appeared to be human, but was a doll, her face having a slightly insectoid appearance, as well as adorning a bright red hood. "Lord Nightmare!" cried out the doll girl. She pulled out a scroll, holding it in the air. "Upon the authority of the throne of Edenfall, we have a warrant for your arrest for the murder of Casilda the Red. We have come to give you the opportunity to surrender yourself willingly to face judgment." What was this? The Dark Guardian stared at the 3 soldiers, baffled by their boldness, his head slowly tilting. Is that so? Killer and Cross both drew their blades, Horror preparing his mace while Dust summoned a pair of Gaster blasters. The 3 royal guards sat still, overlooking the odds in front of them. The crowd went into a minor panic, moving away from the mounted soldiers as they beheld the confrontation. "It is so! Will you surrender yourself to justice?" the doll girl repeated. "Asgore has no authority here. Take your warrant and return from where you came," Nightmare said, his voice stern. "You might do well to advise your king that I am now the ruler of Rivaldo. It would be best for our diplomatic relations that I be granted immunity." "Lord Nightmare!" The doll pushed her pony forward, but as she did, the crowd stepped in her way. Nightmare felt Killer move to defend him, but the blighted skeleton gently grabbed his arm. Looking about at the city folk, it was clear that this wasn't 5 against 3, but 3 against the city. Still, a stubbornness possessed her as her gaze returned to Nightmare's. "It'll be easier for you if you come quietly. Your sentence may be lighter if only you cooperate." Lowering his head, Nightmare's eyelight sharpened upon her. He could tell she was another ghost monster like the Spectre performers. If there was any connection between them, he would have to investigate later. "And I advise you to leave, before my followers make their own plans of what to do with your remains." "Red," said the fox woman, pulling her horse up beside the doll. She shook her head. "We've fulfilled our duty here. He knows and he's refused. We can't push any further." Anger and frustration radiated from the little doll, more so than Nightmare would expect from someone just doing their job. He sensed a similar feeling from the human as well, though they remained quiet. Finally giving a little huff, the doll turned her pony around and began to head away. It was then that a memory struck Nightmare. A name. "Sharoba, that's your name, isn't it?" The foxwoman had started to turn her own mount before looking back at Nightmare. She was surprised he recognized her. Just as well, Nightmare had only seen her once before, years and years ago, before he'd ever stepped foot in Rivaldo. His teeth curled into a grin. Tilting his head, his voice became sickly sweet. "Send my regards to your husband, Chujin, if you please." But there was fear in her soul, but her face expressed mild disgust. Turning her head away, she followed the doll through the crowd, along with the armored human. Nightmare thought he caught the flash of crimson eyes within the iron helm before the 3 of them disappeared behind the buildings. Finally, Nightmare was left with his followers so that he might continue to fill their minds with his crafted delusions. "Want me to kill them?" Killer whispered before he began. "No, let them be," the Dark Guardian whispered back. "They knew they were never going to take me from here. Asgore sent them to keep an eye on me. Best we let them be and not stir up any trouble."